Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous, the most threatening, the most controversial show on social media. Anywhere.
We are back, friends. We are back. Today is, what the heck is today? April 5th,
Is it April
2020.
5th? Yeah, it is April 5th, yeah.
We have been MIA for a couple of weeks because we've been obviously dealing with the same thing you have been dealing with, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So we've been kind of hunkering down here in the house, making preparations.
Trying our best to follow the directions and suggestions of the CDC and others, social distancing.
Yeah, doing all that kind of, not with each other, but, with other people outside.
Mm-hmm.
If you have not been following us closely, we are still broadcasting on Sputnik Radio on By Any Means Necessary with my co-host Sean Blackman.
Sean the Voice Blackman.
Sean the Voice Blackman. We're just broadcasting remotely. Me from here in the Luqman Nation studios, and Sean from his remote location, and our producer Wyatt Reed is also remote. The only person in the Sputnik studios is our sound technician Ryan. So that's been going on for about 3 weeks. And but By Any Means Necessary is still broadcasting daily, every day. You can download those shows on iTunes, on Spreaker, on iHeartRadio,
or any place that you get your podcast.
Any place where you get your podcast, you can podcast. You can listen to us on By Any Means Necessary on podcast. Also, the Real News Network still up and running. I've done some segments for the Real News Network.
Real Jamaican you.
So
the tree jobs, man.
I got tree jobs, man. Tree jobs. And it's actually more than 3 jobs because I'm still doing stuff we're still working with our church.
Mm-hmm.
So fulfilling our duties through our church. And both of us are very careful, though, with going out because, look, let's be real. We are middle-aged Black people with pre-existing health conditions that put us in a position where if we go out and contract the virus, we would have a harder time recovering from it because we are in those vulnerable categories for various health reasons.
Even though I'm still going to work. I'm still going out.
He is still going to work because he is essential. He is considered an essential employee.
Which only means
going
that
on over there with the Facebook.
When they say essential employee, which means they don't have no problem sacrificing me.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that in a minute. Refresh that page.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are going to talk about that in a bit. About how capitalists have tried to sacrifice folks, but let's get to a few other things first. Hey, listen, if you all have noticed, we have done what we said we are going to do, and we have been putting more content up on our Patreon page. So we have new articles on our Patreon page. We are going to commit to posting at least 3 public articles on our Patreon page and providing at least 2 patron-only exclusive content articles for our faithful patrons. So check out Luqman Nation on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon under, guess where? Luqman Nation.
No one else has that. I mean, no one else has Luqman or Nation or anything. So you can't say, oh, well, I thought it was the other Luqman.
Find it. No, you can find it. It's LUQMANNATION.
But before we go into the meat and potatoes of this show, first of all, let's if you're new to this show, we'll let you know that we are Black African-centered socialists, and we try to give the news and current events through the prism, right? Is that right? The prism of an Afrocentric perspective. And so anyway, you if you're joining us, then you'll find some things that you like, you find some things that you don't like. What Jackie and I try to do is always keep it 100 and keep it real. And so anyway, though, share this video, invite your friends
Yes.
and your enemies, and and just share this video. Tell your friends about us. We are the most, and I say this with I say that with all the sincerity because this is what we've been told. This is not something that we're saying. That we are one of the most honest shows on social media today. We don't have the flash and glitter. We don't have the we don't follow the trends, and we just try to give it straight and with no chaser, and and we just hope that you enjoy the content that we have.
And we do want to shout out our friends. Thank you, hon.
Virginia Defenders.
That shout out our friends
Yeah,
in Richmond, Virginia Defenders for freedom, justice, and equality. Those people do some great work down there. Our friends Phil Willeto and Anna Edwards. We haven't forgotten about y'all. I know y'all are like, where did the Luqmans go before all of this happened? But trust and believe when all of this clears up, we will be back in the trenches with our comrades. But absolutely go to their Facebook page and subscribe to their newsletter. Amazing good stuff that they do down there in Richmond.
We also want to shout out Nefta Freeman and PACA,
and Pan African Community Action,
which
here
we're
in
also
DC.
members of and active members of, and they're doing great work themselves. So there's people out there that's doing the work, and we just encourage you, if you're not already, to join the local organization, because the only way that things are going to get done, it's not going to get done from the politicians. It's not going to get done from the CEOs or the corporate entities. It's going to get done from people, just like the old PBS advertisement, that this program was bought by people like you.
Exactly.
So this is the only way that this country will change is by people like you and us who have the who just take the initiative to change it. It's not going to come from the top. It always comes from the bottom. And so we just encourage you that wherever you are, join a local organization and start to make that change.
Absolutely. We want to shout out some of our viewers on YouTube. Uncle, brother, what's going on? My friend, our brother, what's going on? Who we got over here on Facebook?
Who do we have?
Let's see.
Okay, let's see.
I think I see Veronica.
Oh yeah, Veronica's here. Marion Francis.
What's going on, folks?
Let me see. Oh man, we got a little crew again. Marion Francis joined, and we have Veronica, old friend of ours.
Yeah.
And hey, thank you guys for joining us.
So let's get into this, because I'm going to start this off with some stuff that's going to make all you Bernie Sanders supporters mad. And I don't care. I just don't care, because I think we need to make this clear about our relationship with Bernie Sanders and his campaign. As Pan-African socialists, we understand that there is only so much electoral politics is going to get us in this country, because we've seen it over and over again. And for those who are new to the Bernie Sanders revolution, that's a whole nother topic. We've had this conversation before. People don't understand that what Sanders is doing is not necessarily a revolution, it's a movement. Those words do matter, but okay. But see, what's going on right now in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic in regard to Sanders' campaign is, I think, indicative of the problem that I've been trying to point out to people with Bernie Sanders, the candidate, and the way Bernie Sanders, the candidate, runs his campaign. Because, listen, we are supportive of Bernie Sanders' policies. We're supportive of progressive policies, that they're great. But we don't get into hero worship of politicians, because politicians are people, and people have weird ideas about how they should do things depending on their own personal proclivities. And that's human. With that, we all do that. But see, that's why politicians have campaign staff around them to help them navigate this minefield of, I know you don't want to do things this way because you think it should be done this way, but let me tell you, this is why you hired me, because this is how I'm telling you can reach out to this group of people. And if the politician won't listen to the campaign staff who are giving him that kind of advice, then the politician's campaign will falter in places where the campaign staff chooses to ignore because they are uh, uh, bowing to the whims of their favorite politician. See, this is why we can't put politicians on pedestals. So here's the thing: we're in the midst of this coronavirus epidemic,
Right.
and honestly, I hate to say it, Abdus, but this pandemic has proven that every progressive policy that Sanders and progressives before him, because Sanders didn't come up with these policies. He's just the latest politician to champion them, and that's great.
Well, he recycled them.
He recycled them from other people. Honestly, some greater men than himself. But this pandemic and the U.S. response to this pandemic is proving the need for every progressive policy that he has championed.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Right? You think so?
Yes, I do. I mean, one of the things that we spoke about this plenty of times. One of the things that this pandemic has done was really just taking the clothes. I know the old cliche of the emperor has no clothes, but the emperor has no drawers. The emperor has no socks. The emperor has no. I mean, it really showed. And remember yesterday we were talking about this, and this is I have this weird imagery that I have when I think of something, and what Corona has done for me is and I had this image of the United States being this abandoned McMansion. Remember the McMansions back when people, and you go and you had the tumbleweeds and all this stuff. I mean, and you look at it and you say, wow, this was once a beautiful place. But now, look, the raccoons and took over and all this stuff. I mean, if we as Americans, and I said this to you yesterday, Jackie, any American that feels any sense of patriotism should bow their heads in shame. Because this coronavirus has really exposed what this nation, and I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government. Let me make that clear. I'm not talking about the people. It has exposed what this government is really about. And it's not about us. It's not about people. It's funny because you and I were in Costco one day. And this was when the pandemic first happened, people were doing this panic buying and all this other kind of stuff. And we couldn't find some of the stuff that, we usually buy.
Right. And this was like a month ago.
Yeah, this was like a month ago.
Yeah, before this really, exploded here.
I mean, and so what happened was something just came to my head and I said, man, we can't find no beef. So who's the third world country now, bitch?
That's right. And we were, that's right, because we were asking, that was the first supply, like big supply thing that we went to do. And we were like, okay, well, let's go make sure we get all of our meats and stock our freezer. And we get there and there's no chicken. And the guy in Costco said, and I said, well, do you have any ground beef? And he said, no, man, we don't have any ground beef.
Just turkey.
Yeah, he said, we don't even have anything to make ground beef
with. He did say that.
Because, Costco actually grinds their own ground beef. It's amazing. And that's when you made that joke that was hilarious.
Right. Who's the third world country now, bitch? And, and it's funny because this is after all the shithole comments from Donald Trump and all this stuff. And, and now it's like, wow, we're the shithole.
Exactly. And it was such a good joke that the Costco meat guy, the guy in the meat department, thought it was funny. He was laughing.
Shout out to those guys too.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's funny because this pandemic. I mean, in this capitalist society where it's all about this classism. The classism, the elitism, and I got a college degree, you don't. Right. And how many times have we seen during the time when the fast food workers were trying to get a little bit more money, and people were just, other workers. This is coming from other people who gets a paycheck, who might get a little bit more, but they're saying, oh wow, I'm not paying a McDonald's worker $15 an hour to fix my burger. They should have made better decisions.
Now they're all heroes.
Right.
Now all the low wage, low skill workers are heroes.
Right. And what's really ironic is, Jackie, is the fact that all of the and this is from the rank and file workers too. We all look up to these CEOs and we look up to these people with the suits and ties and stuff. And I'm not saying that their job isn't important, but we always look down on the service workers. We always look down on those who we see through them, and these are the people who are on the front line. These are the people who are the heroes. Our medical workers who we walk in and we cuss them out. We have a hospital right around the corner from us that I can tell you how many times nurses and doctors in them had to get in fights. My personal doctor who I had once was so battle scarred. I mean, I thought she was an MMA fighter. I mean, she just had. I told Jackie, I said, man, what does this woman do after work?
She probably had cage matches.
Oh my God! But I've watched patients or potential patients going to ER because that's the poor people. That's what they do. They funnel into the ER.
Most of us don't have medical doctors.
We don't have medical doctors.
We go to the ER.
Go to the ER and sit there for hours. And what happens is that of course human beings are who they are. And they get frustrated, get angry and stuff because things don't go their way. And then they want to fight on this and they want to fight on that and all this stuff. And I've witnessed this. And so, but these are the people now who we have to literally depend on for our very lives.
Exactly. And we leftists have been saying this for years, that workers have the power. We've been making the argument that these people are not low-skilled workers. They are low-paid because the capitalists have put a value on their labor by saying that we're not going to pay you more money because we don't believe your labor is valued at any more than $7 an hour. And these people have to fight and scrap for $15 an hour. But now that these are the only people who are available to deliver your food,
who are deemed essential,
who now they're essential.
There you go.
And the folks who are pulling in six figures, who had the nice insurance, that's a whole nother show, but who had the nice health insurance that was attached to their job, now those people don't have insurance and they don't have paychecks coming in, and now they see the value of the labor of those people that they looked down on for all those years. The McDonald's workers, the Burger King workers,
the truck drivers,
grocery store workers, the truck drivers.
Yeah, let me tell you something. And one thing that happens with these type of things, emergencies, whether they're Corona is a natural disaster, you might as well say. But every time these things come to us, that's out of our control, then we rediscover our humanity.
Yeah.
So what happens is that every day before Corona, BC, before Corona, right? So before Corona,
BCV,
right. Yeah. So before Corona, as a truck driver, man, people just was like, oh man, who are you? Really, literally have no respect for the construction worker, the blue collar worker, and all this stuff. Because after all, we don't have degrees, but the thing of it is, we don't have the student debt. Right. But this is the thing. So and just this blatantly, and I know that there's some of my fellow truck drivers who haven't made it easy on a lot of us, but most of us are try to be good drivers and try to be courteous and everything because our livelihood depends on it.
Right.
So but people like, hey, look, you're just a truck driver. I don't have to have to respect you. But now, because of Corona, and because people have a sense of dread, let's make it clear.
That's right.
There's a sense of dread. There's a sense that we can't. We don't have any power here. Here's an invisible organism, because a virus is a living thing, it's an organism, and it's this invisible organism that don't have a bunch of tanks, they don't have nuclear weapons, don't have all these things that we protect ourselves with, but here's a living invisible organism that does what it wants to do, that we can't do anything about except let it do what it do. Yep. And then all of a sudden, because we're not in control as human beings, we can't kill it, we can't do this, we can't do that. Now there's a sense of dread because we don't know what to do.
Right. And now because we have this sense of dread.
Right.
Now everybody is pro-worker. And I mean everybody is pro-worker, which is a good thing. That's fine. Okay. But here's the point that we want to make about this situation and the campaign of Bernard Sanders. Listen. There have been people who have been saying that, now is not the time to talk partisan politics. Now is the time to come together as a nation. No, it's not. No, now is the time. Now is the time to take the gloves off and make it real clear why the policies that you as a candidate have always been important, but are even more important now. And I know that a lot of our friends who we love very dearly are going to disagree with us vehemently about what we are about to say, but Bernie Sanders has been dropping the ball on making that case pretty badly in the past few weeks. Look, I understand that he is a sitting senator. He's doing his job still, and that's wonderful. But I don't understand why he's not doing like TV ads. Right? Like, I think that social media has gotten a lot of people attuned to the idea that everybody gets their news and information from social media.
Right, 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 right.
And I think this is a huge, huge mistake, huge mistake that was made by, definitely it's been being made by a lot of Sanders supporters who mean well, who understand the issues, who understand that Sanders policies are good for a lot of people, but who kind of refuse to believe that everybody ain't in your woke ass Facebook groups.
Well,
I mean, everybody does not get their news from social media. A lot of people are still watching CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, CBS News, and Fox News. That's just the truth. So I'm wondering why Bernie Sanders is not doing TV ads.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, Bernie Sanders, out of all of the other candidates that were running, and even with Biden now, he has he has the bulk of the younger supporters.
Yes.
And so the millennials and all those. So millennials, this is what they know.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, they didn't grow up like we did with the 3 channels and you know, 3 major channels and PBS and UHF. They don't even know what UHF is.
They don't even know what the hell UHF
right,
is.
Right. I mean, you know, so this is not part of their existence. So they came, they were born in the age of the computer. They were born in the age of the internet and the social media and stuff. So this is what they know. They don't understand that there are actually people like us who preceded that, who were born before that time, who still love our CBS and NBC and ABC, right, who still feel comfortable, even folks that are older than we are, who still feel comfortable with commercial television and read newspapers and magazines. Right. So those things, even though they're in decline, as the population gets older and die off, and younger people who you know, get their news elsewhere, yes, that is a trend. But at the same time, there are still enough people who have grown up with the print media and others who still get their news that way. A lot of them get their news based off of some of the journalists who they've been looking at for years, who are still around.
Right.
You know, even though those guys are dying off too. But still, again, Jackie, I agree with you. You know, I heard a guy the other day when I was at the McDonald's. I was taking a break, and somebody said to him, you know, about the coronavirus or something. Well, aren't you? Oh no, it was about the unemployment. He said, well, I have to apply for unemployment something. So they said, well, you can apply on a computer. I don't own a computer.
Right.
You know, and the guy, he wasn't much older than me. I mean, I'm 54. He had to be about at least my age or just a little older. But he said, oh, I don't bother with that. I don't own a computer. I don't even know how to, you know. So you have people like that out there, you know, and they navigate life every day.
Exactly.
Well,
and I mean, you can't, I'm sorry, but you can't call yourself a progressive. And this is where our understanding as organizers come in, because you can't just be, I mean, there's a place for everybody in the movement. There absolutely is. But when you understand that when you are organizing people, you have to meet people where they are. You can't organize people by hoping that they come up to your level. That's not how it works. You have to meet people where they are. When you understand that, then you understand that you have to tailor your message to meet people where they are. But here's an example. Now, Pan-African Community Action Organization we belong to is carrying out some mutual aid here in D.C. Now, there is a Facebook page for PACA. There is a Twitter page for PACA. But in the meeting, we sat there and we said, well, what about all of the people who we want to get supplies to who don't have Facebook and who have Twitter?
Or Instagram.
Well, we need to create a flyer, a trifold flyer that we can print out and slide under people's doors, put it in their mailboxes, and that is what we had to do. So that's the kind of common sense, grassroots, you know, ABC building block kind of stuff that if you are serious about connecting with people who you believe will benefit from your message, whatever your message is, then you'll do that. And it has always bothered me that this has been a problem with the Sanders campaign. Now, it is especially an issue now because Bernie Sanders, like we said before all of this happened, we have been talking about how Bernie Sanders was too much Mr. Nice Guy and how he wasn't going to punch Joe Biden in the mouth the last time he debated him. And he didn't. He completely missed that opportunity. He was just too nice, and Sanders is still being really too nice about calling out the number one thing that could end Joe Biden's campaign right now. I mean, coronavirus is pretty much making Joe Biden look like a complete fool because every time his campaign puts him on any kind of, and this is the funny thing, because Joe Biden's campaign like does the opposite of what Sanders can. Like, Joe Biden shouldn't be on social media. Like, he should not be on anybody's social media outlets. But his campaign keeps trying to put him on social media to endear him to the younger generation of voters.
Right.
And he keeps fucking it up. He keeps putting his foot in his mouth because he's Joe Biden and he can't help himself.
Well, and you know, it's funny, and I want to defend Sanders on that too. About and I think this needs to be looked at.
Okay.
You're talking about generation difference. For example, Sanders been in Congress how long?
198 years. He's been in Congress for several decades.
Well, okay,
at least 40 years.
All right, but we have to look at how the culture has changed since then. I mean, there are things that you and I, the values that you and I grew up with, that we see people who are younger than us that we won't engage in. Like, for example, some of we say all the time, you and I grew up where if you come to somebody's house, you speak.
This is true.
Right.
This is true.
So the kids today, and I'm old. These kids today, but a lot of young people and some older people, that value is not widely shared. So you'll have people who will sit there and you say, hey, how you doing? They just look at you or whatever. But that type of community interaction has changed. The culture has changed. The culture has become more individualistic. We talk about how in our neighborhoods, how we don't even know our neighbors don't know us. We see them, but there's really no meaningful interaction with each other. And so, but when you and I grew up, you used to go next door and borrow eggs or sugar or whatever.
Right.
And nobody would look down on you and say, they came to my house and borrowed some sugar. They must be doing bad. No, it was just because you were my neighbor. If you came to me and you needed something, there was times that my mother and father would work and wasn't home. They would tell Miss such and such who was next to her, because there was no cell phones then. Right. So they would tell Miss such and such, when we would come home from school, our neighbor would say, Michael, this, that, the other, your mother called and said that you guys stay here until she get home. Right? So that's what we did. So, so what I'm saying is now a neighbor tells your kid, oh, your mother said you can come in my house and wait for her to come home. No. Because the culture has changed. So I think in fairness to Bernie Sanders, he came up in politics during the time when it was probably a lot more decorum, a little bit more gentlemanly, and all those other things. And I'm not saying that, sometimes you don't need to change with the times. But I'm saying that after, when you grow up in a certain culture, Biden was able to, but see, Biden always has been, even back then,
slick.
Well, not only slick, but he bad tempered.
That's
he's been
true.
bad tempered for. I remember him during the late '70s being bad tempered, cussing people out on the Senate floor and all that stuff. He's always been that way.
Yeah, so. Okay, I will concede that point. All right, I'm going to back off Sanders a little bit because, all right.
What I'm saying is that I don't think that he's not engaging Biden in the way that we would like for him to engage Biden or even the other Democrats and whatever. I don't think that he's just being a punk.
No. I know what you mean.
Right.
Okay. All right, that's a good point. And I'm glad you made it. Excuse me. I'll concede that one point.
Okay.
That's the only point.
And I don't get many.
I'm going to concede.
And I don't get many of those. I'll take that one.
I mean, because now you're right. Sanders is not pulling punches because he's afraid of Biden.
No.
That is a narrative that I'm not trying to advocate. It's just now really is the time for Sanders to punch Biden in the mouth on this one issue of Biden saying that even in the midst of this virus proving the need for Medicare for all, Biden says, I still wouldn't support it. I mean, seriously, that's the ad right there. All Bernie Sanders campaign would need is a superimposed picture of crazy Uncle Joe Biden. That slow moving image of him over some background looking ominous, and saying,
remember that cartoon? What was it, Dagwood? It was an old cartoon that used to be in the newspaper called Dagwood. Some used to eat
Dagwood and Blondie.
Well, Dagwood. Remember the Dagwood's eyes? They were just like
black.
Yes,
they were black.
Yeah, that's Biden. You ever look at Biden? It's just like you got Dagwood. Yeah. I mean, really creepy.
We are showing our age right now. But that's all that the Sanders campaign would need. But there are no television ads anywhere in the country pointing out this glaring weakness in the Biden campaign. Sanders wouldn't even have to say anything, but he won't even do that. And I think this is a holdover of the weakness in Sanders' campaign, which contributed to his loss in the South. Now, I got to preface this by explaining to people what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that the only reason Bernie Sanders lost the South was because of his lack of presence in black media, because that was a huge problem. That was an enormous problem that was easily resolved, and a former campaign staffer made it clear that this wasn't the first time that it was suggested to him that he take advantage of that, and his campaign refused. But when you look at, if you are an organizer, you are a leader, and you are examining your strategy as to why you lost a battle, you have to be honest about the weaknesses in your strategy, or else the next time you're going to get your ass kicked the same way you got it kicked before, just by some different people.
Well, I think that we're not speaking, when we talk about the South, I think that we're ignoring the big 600-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to the South. He's a socialist Jew. No, let's come on now. I know people don't like me saying this, but we're talking about the South, and we're talking about the Bible Belt. Right. Yeah. We're talking about a Bible Belt who believed the Jews killed Jesus, number one. And now you have Bernie Sanders, this Jew who says, I'm a democratic socialist, who he's not anti-religion, we know that. But at the same time, these are scary ideas for these people. Do you know how long people like the White Citizen Council and the Klan and all them has spoken out against communism and socialism and stuff? Yeah. Okay, they might not exist anymore, but their legacy still exists in the fact that this was like a bulwark thing of the South. Anti-communism, anti-socialism, anti-this. And, black folks down south, whether we thought one way or another, it didn't matter what we thought. So, and we just try to navigate the best way we could. But what I'm saying is that we're only a few decades from the 60s. We're only a few decades from the 50s and 60s when you had the communist hysteria and the communist. And so, a lot of that generation are dying off. But again, ideas that are passed down through generations and stuff, though. Right. And look, we're talking about, and please, I'm not disparaging anybody who lives in the South, but we're talking about the poorest people in the country, white people, who continually vote for folks who make them poorer.
That's true.
Now, why is that? Why is it that they feel in Mississippi, the poorest state in the country, why is it that you got poor white folks who are sitting on a porch that's held up by cinder blocks, talking about they don't want no government handout?
Right.
During the time when Obama was the national what was the Obama's thing?
The ACA?
Yeah. Okay. When Obama told the states, "Hey, we're gonna give y'all money for this ACA to get it going,"
right? So you can have healthcare,
right? So and you had folks who were sitting there already picking the lesions on their arm and busting boils and stuff, and sitting there with 2 teeth and all this other kind of stuff, talking about I don't want the government to send me nothing. So clearly they're not unintelligent people. So clearly they can look at their surroundings and be like, damn, this really sucks. I'm really suffering here. And I'm not getting anything from my state government.
Right.
So why is it that they feel that they have to stand on that which they know doesn't benefit them? So here Sanders come, and he's talking about free healthcare. He's talking about which is really not free, and he's talking about free education and this and that and the other and all. And so you have folks saying like, wow, these are very, now it's not threatening to us. Right. These ideas are not threatening to us. These ideas are don't threaten a lot of people who look at this and say, yeah, this is what a civilized society should be. But the people who's been under a certain governance, a certain ideology that constantly tells them the government don't owe you shit. You're poor because you didn't make the right decisions. You are poor because those black folks and Mexicans up there got affirmative action, and a decent white man like you should have got that job. But you know what happened? They put an incompetent black person in that job, and that's why you don't have that. You don't have that because of that black man in the White House, that Obama. And you don't have that, And so after a while, it's not, of being under that kind of propaganda and that type of the miseducation that these people, because they only the people that rule them, the people that's in charge of these states like that, they only say that in order to maintain the status quo.
Right.
And in order, so I mean, we know this thing. So it always boggled my mind why a person who is the poorest person, or who live in the poorest state in the country, Mississippi, who will sit there and deny government help when it comes to getting your teeth fixed, getting your health. I mean, that's not rational. That's not sane. Right. It's not logical.
Right.
So it has to come from another place.
Yeah, it does come from another place. And when you have a campaign that seems able to modulate a campaign message to reach those people, but it doesn't want to modulate the campaign message to meet the to meet or to reach the other group of people who are suffering under the same, government policies, or the same system, then I gotta kind of question, okay, how serious are you about reaching all the people that you say your campaign is supposedly so good for? Okay, let me make this really plain. There's a video, and we're gonna put a link to the video in this video when we are done, of that Marcus Farrell, who was a campaign, he worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016. He was a couple of other black folks that we know that we have been dealing with for quite some time, since 2016, who they told us this was a problem then, and we were like, I don't know, maybe not. We were wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt, withholding our judgment, not wanting to judge anyone harshly, but not denying these people the truth of their experiences. So lo and behold, here we are in 2020, and the exact same thing happens with the Bernie Sanders campaign in the South that had happened in 2016. And then news media is coming out reporting on black campaign staffers in 2020 saying the exact same thing that the Sanders campaign told black staffers in 2016 about the lack of the kind of targeted outreach. And it's not that there was no outreach whatsoever in the South. It's that the Sanders campaign didn't want to modulate the messaging to reach those black folk down there. Here's a great example. Marcus Farrell says in his video that he told the Sanders campaign, when they released the America video, that when they were going to release it in the South, don't use the Simon and Garfunkel song. Now, that Sanders America video is amazing. It's wonderful. It's a great piece of uplifting, inspiring campaign stuff. It's good stuff. But Simon and Garfunkel just kind of doesn't resonate with everybody. I know who they are. You know who they are. Okay, they're fine. But truth be told, if I am hanging out with my folk down in Jarrett, Virginia, and Emporia, Virginia, and in Roanoke Rapids, Virginia, and in Charleston, if that same video, nothing changed in the video, none of the people, none of the messaging, but if the only thing changed in the video was the music, that would have resonated with people. Marcus Farrell told the Sanders campaign that in 2016, he said if they were going to release a video in the South, to release it with the soundtrack of a Marvin Gaye song. That would have been fucking gold. That would have been gold. It would have been gold. You would have had church mamas up in the church singing What's Going On. And who is this Bernie Sanders? I'm not kidding. Because, see, we understand that that's how we reach some of our people. We can keep having these arguments about whether we think people are intelligent because they respond to certain things in different ways or not. But what is that if that's not marketing? And that's always done. So how is it different now? So that wasn't done.
Right.
That wasn't done. And some people were turned off by the video because they felt like it didn't speak to them.
I mean, you can't, and no offense to people like Simon and Garfunkel, but I mean, you can't get much whiter than that.
See, I didn't want to be the one to say.
No, but I'm not saying that to insult anyone. Please believe me. I mean, you're not going to go to an African American cookout and hear that. And what I'm saying is that these guys are I'm not disparaging their talent. I'm not disparaging the mark that they made on music or on the culture. But I mean, you're not going to play George Clinton at some of these white hangouts. I mean, you're not, I mean, come on. George Clinton, to us, I mean, is a legendary artist. But you're not going to go to the Young Republicans Party and play dum, 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 it's not that, and it's not that George Clinton is not a good artist. It's that doesn't fit that venue.
Right.
So I mean, if I'm trying to attract preppy college age white kids, I have to be careful of what kind of music that I play. Maybe some Taylor Swift or some light hip hop, something, but I'm not gonna throw George Clinton or something.
You ain't gonna throw no Muddy Waters on.
No Muddy Waters or nothing like that. I mean, and all of these people are great. So but this is the thing, Jackie, I need to ask you. Mm-hmm. Now, how much of this is because I'm sure Sanders is surrounded by very intelligent people, and now how much of this is Sanders saying no, this is not what I want to go with. This is the way I want to go. How much is this is actually Sanders because he's surrounded by young people now. And we don't know. We're not in the inner circle. So, I mean, we're just playing guesswork here. But how much is this of old man Sanders saying, no, I know what's best and this is what I'm going to do?
There is some of that according to the folks we know personally. Marcus Farrell, Noah Shonga, Mondale Robinson, all these folks we've been, rolling with for the past, 4 or 5 years who have said some of it is Bernie Sanders. Some of it is Jeff fucking Weaver, who is still making decisions of this caliber in 2016. I mean, you can't continue to have black staffers make the same complaints 2 campaigns in a row and see this smoke and not be like, okay, maybe there's some fire there.
But see, this is the thing. Now we're really stepping into the AM right here because that's an old third base thing for those of you who are my age and a little younger.
Dang, we're old.
Yeah, but this is another thing too. You just can't throw black faces in places and think that that's okay.
That's the thing. I mean,
because
exactly.
Just because a person is black doesn't mean that they have the same experiences as you and I. I mean, look, Gayle King. And she readily admits she grew up upper middle class. There's some things that Gayle King would be shocked about if we exposed our lives to her and how we grew. But the thing of it is the fact that there's this laziness, I believe, on the part of a lot of progressives, that they should have learned from the Republicans, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But there's a lot of laziness on the part of progressives who feel that there's no depth to the black community.
Oh, that's a good point.
There's no depth to the black community.
Shore.
So now all we have to do is get somebody who is black, and I know this is oversimplification, but this is what it seems like to us on the other side. You get somebody black, you know, and they, you ask them, so what do your people like? Well, if they haven't grew up in the hood, if they haven't grew up in certain areas that you're trying to attract. Now, if they grew up in upper middle class black, they look, they know that. But to say what people in Southeast like, that's not their experience. And so what happens is that, it's like, oh, we got a black person in that spot. So, yeah, they know. No, that person doesn't know. That person locks the door like the white person locks the door of their car when they ride through the neighborhood. So I think that Jackie and I, mainly Jackie, but, and this is a shameless plug, but so what? We are political urban consultants, right? Mm-hmm. You ain't gonna find that title nowhere else on the social universe sphere, whatever you want to call it. And yet, we don't get called. Now, if you're trying to attract people who we live with, we're the people to talk to. Mm-hmm. But we've been to forums, we've been to that Netroots, and we've been all that, and we explained that to them. Plenty of people, they're not the Noah Shangas, and we explained that to Yane and all of them. We explained that to these sea full of white folks and stuff who want to be progressive and stuff, and say, well, how can we connect with the black community? Hire us. But see, what happens is you won't hire us.
No, because they don't want to pay us.
Yeah, you don't hire us because and that's a good thing. I don't want to diverge too much, but I like that point because we had people who were in this long before Jack and I got in it, who have a name of doing this type of outreach, who would tell us, I got paid a lot less than the white person they brought in here, yes, and got more experience than them,
and got more experience.
Right.
And it's still
so here we are. If you're trying to attract the people who we live around, you don't go to Gayle King. And not Gayle, just an example, but you don't go to people who live like Gayle King, who grew up like Gayle King. No, you go to people who grew up like Jackie and I. You go up to people who know the ins and outs and who understands. We're here. We're in the pulse. We hear the pulse of our people. This is why we created this platform. We created this platform because nobody was talking to us. And that's why I created this platform. We said we didn't know how we was going to be heard. No. We didn't know what, if anybody paid us any mind. In the beginning, nobody did. But we said that we felt that people were talking through us. Nobody were addressing our issues. Like our issues weren't important. How we thought wasn't important. The way that we viewed culture wasn't important. The way that the things that concerned us wasn't important. We had white and some black progressives come through here and be like, oh, we know what's best for you.
Oh, yeah.
And without even talking to us, oh, we know what's best for you. You need blah, 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 blah. And so it becomes a relationship that's not equal.
Exactly. And that is precisely the problem with the way Sanders is choosing to be the diplomat.
Right.
In the face of this coronavirus epidemic. Because here are the stakes, all right? Let's be clear. Here are the stakes politically for what could happen if the Sanders campaign does not capitalize on political messaging on why his policies are best, why he is the better candidate than Joe Biden, why Bernie Sanders really does need to seize this moment and punch Biden in the mouth in regard to becoming the Democratic nominee. Because listen, we understand that when people don't care about our issues and they throw some random black person with a picture, sitting at some table in a black restaurant and in front of a plate of greens and some hot sauce that we know damn well they ain't gonna eat. We understand the politicians who do that are pandering because we know by their policies that they don't care. How much more impactful would it be if a politician who we knew cared about the issues that we face took the time to look at a small detail and say, okay, if my message is going to be received by this group of people, if I just tweak my messaging this little bit, then I'm just going to do it. Then it's not pandering. Then it's that taking that one extra step in building that relationship. But here are the stakes if this does not happen. Because what Sanders should be doing is he should be buying ads on radio, especially on black radio. He should be buying ads on gospel radio in particular. Let's make something clear. Everybody's afraid of the future now, but black people are more receptive to political messaging now because the rest of the country is caught up with our lived reality. We're all sitting here going, see, told you. Oh, y'all just now scared? We told you. So now you've got black folks who are in a position who are waiting to hear which politician is going to do the thing that is going to help us the most. And this is the danger of Sanders not seizing this moment. Not that Biden will win if he doesn't, but that Trump will be able to seize this moment, do what Biden won't, and then all of a sudden, Trump becomes the reasonable looking guy. Not to say that Trump will make black folks vote for him. That's not what I'm saying. But when you've got Donald Trump saying that he is proposing that the federal government pay hospitals at Medicare rates for treatment for COVID-19 patients, not testing, treatment, which can run tens of thousands of dollars. Donald Trump is proposing a limited rollout of Medicare for all. It's just Medicare for all COVID patients.
Right.
But what is Medicare for all if it's not paying hospitals Medicare rates for medical treatment? If Donald Trump does that and Bernie Sanders does not counter that action with actual progressive messaging that lays out his progressive bona fides, that his policies are supposed to be so much better for everybody else, then no, it's not that Biden wins, it's that Trump wins. And I mean, politics, this whole moment has made the political case for all of Sanders' platform. All he has to do is throw some money at some ads and honestly seize the bully pulpit and get the people, all of the people, not just the millennials, but all of the people now, all of the working class, all of the folks, those low paid hourly workers who can't afford a computer, who can't afford internet access all the time, who the only computer they have is the one on their cell phone.
Well, see, I never felt Sanders wanted to be president.
Really?
I've always felt, I think that all of this thing that we're criticizing him for and how, I always felt, even from the first time he ran, that Sanders really didn't want to be president. I think that Sanders wanted to raise some issues. I think that his movement wanted to raise some issues. And I think that he really wanted to be that spark that would propel this socialist movement forward. I think that Sanders, like a lot of us, was disappointed by Occupy Wall Street. And I think that that a lot of Sanders, like a lot of us, even though Sanders, I mean, this isn't something that he picked up overnight. I mean, he was always about this. But I kind of think that he felt like after the failure of Occupy Wall Street to really make any significant change, he felt he had to throw his hat in the ring. I don't think that he really was serious in the beginning, and I'm talking about the first time he ran, of becoming president. I think that's why when they robbed him of it, I think that's why he didn't fight as much. I think that he felt like, okay, I raised these issues, let's see where it's going to go. When he seen that that the establishment and Democrats and that that all of the people who claim they want change wasn't really about change, I think that then he said, you know what, then screw it. I'm going to be more serious this time, and I'm going to we really I really need to do it. You're talking about a guy who's who I believe that, and that's the reason why I say that we really have to be careful. Not really careful, but we have to really understand that Sanders has got me by 20 years. So even I don't have the energy a lot of times to deal with a lot of the foolishness that's around me like I did maybe 20 years ago. Even I might want to choke somebody around the neck, but then say, well, you know what, I'm middle-aged now. I just don't have the energy. Just let this kid just, get out of my face or something like that, where I wouldn't have tolerated that 20 years ago. So I think that a lot of that has to do with getting older, the energy levels. And that's the reason why age is, even though I'm not an ageist, but I can understand people, really being concerned about the age of candidates and stuff, because there is a physical change. There is a psychological change. There is, these are significant changes as we find out as we're growing older that is real, and so I really believe that Sanders, being an elder statesman, which he is, felt like, hey, look, Occupy Wall Street was a very big disappointment. And I think that a lot of progressives, a lot of us who thought that, wow, maybe we can make something happen with this, and found out that these was many of these people were self-seeking opportunists. Right, and really it wasn't about the movement; it was about the celebrity and the cult of personality, and it wasn't about, unlike the Tea Party, who they all castigated and who everybody thought were just a bunch of bumbling fools. They at least stayed on message. They at least understood what they were fighting for.
That's the key right there. That's because these were the same arguments that people had, that black leftists had during Occupy Wall Street. It's the same arguments that we had in 2016 with the Sanders campaign. It's the same arguments that we keep having. Some of these same arguments black leftists have had in the Green Party. Some of these same arguments, this idea that white progressives don't want to take their marching orders from black folks who live this struggle, live it. And they don't want to center their strategy around how do we appeal to the black working class masses, the Native American working class masses, the marginalized masses. These folks are always going after the disaffected Republican middle class white voter.
Yeah, the angry white man, the angry white guy who once was a Democrat, but then found out they were catering too much to the so-called identity politics, and then all of a sudden there's no place for me. Now, I need to clarify this, and I don't want to get into it in this show right here, but I do want to be fair that there is a case for the so-called disaffected white guy who feels that he doesn't have a place. There's a true place for that. I don't want to minimize that, because that comes from a real space, and we'll talk about that one day.
Yeah.
Where a lot of white working men feel like they have lost their place in the society, whatever that place was or whatever. And we can debate that. But I don't want to say that how they felt was not coming from a real place. It was coming from a real place. As a lot of the politics in our country, especially on the left, has become more feminized, has become really anti-male in some aspects of it. And I think that a lot of white men and some black men too, which is the reason why one of these elections, so many black men, down in Stacey Abrams, how a lot of black men didn't vote for her. You know what I mean? We spoke about that. We don't want to deal with those type of issues within our own movement. I mean, well, not movement, but within our own ideology. The fact that you have some people who have a louder bullhorn than others. So here it is, you're a man, you're a white man, and you don't agree with a lot of the Republican things, but you don't hear anybody talking to you about about your concerns. You're a black man, and here you're talking about, hey, black girls rock and all this other kind of stuff, and black girls do rock. Let me say that. But then you're a black man saying, "But wow, nobody's talking about my issues." Like nobody's talking about my issues. I'm supposed to just man up, you know what I mean? But nobody is trying to understand what my day to day is. And what I'm saying is the fact, and that's hard to do. And I'm not saying it's easy to do. It is hard to do, to try to address the concerns of everybody. I think that's the reason why the Republicans have it so good, because they had, pardon me, they are not only the minority as far as numbers go, which is why they gerrymander everything. They're the minority in ideology. Most people in this country don't believe in what they believe.
That's true.
They don't agree.
Right.
So it's easy for them to say baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet, and kill the terrorists. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. So it's easy for them, because a lot of people who follow them for whatever reasons, whether they have it or not, they don't make issues of those underlying issues. Their thing is mom, pop, mom, pie, and the flag, right. and that's what they say. But on the other side, where we are at, it is a big tent, and when you have a big tent, just ask anybody who got a bunch of kids. You got a bunch of kids in the house. Damn it to hell! You not only are you mother, father, you're a psychiatrist too, because all them kids aren't the same. Right. You got to know how to handle each kid and all this other kind of stuff. It's the same way in these politics. It's like there's people who's going to feel like they're not being spoken to, and so I say that to say that there's a lot of tendency on our part, especially on the left, to just dismiss the angry white man. What I'm saying is that I don't think his anger is any more legit than anybody else's anger. I don't think his anger is any more important than anybody's anger. I will say that. But I don't want to dismiss it and say that it's not coming from a real space.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. But tying it back into, what we're saying, the problem is that in reaching out to those people, so many white progressives and liberals do it too. Liberals are notorious for this. Democratic liberals are notorious for going after the disaffected conservative white male voter, that they make the issues all about why they're angry. And then those disaffected white men don't realize, wait a minute, your solidarity is with black folks too.
Yeah, but and I understand, that's a great point. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't be surprised that in a white supremacist society that white male anger is going to be more important.
And exactly. It's prioritized. But
right,
that's the conversation you have to have. You can't, right. Yeah, you can't just have this conversation
but I understand,
and say...
Right, but I understand what you're saying. And I think that one of the things that made the Democratic black electorate so angry in the past and now, especially in the past, when we were used as fodder.
Right.
Like, when crime bills and all this stuff, when we were used to attract the disaffected white male.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that, and look, these political conversations put up against real life experiences of people are difficult to have. I mean, we're married and we sit here and disagree on stuff sometimes and kind of have to be careful about, okay, let me not say this because I don't want to sound like I'm, like an idiot, like I'm psycho. All conversations about politics are like that. So there's no, we're just going to sit down in a room and hash this out and we're all just going to agree that everything is good for all of us. That's not how this works. This is really hard and dirty work. And if you as progressives are not willing to do that hard and dirty work with the people that you swear all up and down, your favorite politician Bernie Sanders' policies are so good and better for, then I got to really question whether you really care about us or not. Because if you are not willing to do everything you can and convince your favorite candidate that he needs to do everything he can to get this message to as many people as possible outside of social media, outside of Facebook, outside of Twitter. It's wonderful that Sanders marched with auto workers down in Mississippi at Nissan back last summer. That's wonderful. That's fabulous. But how many times are you going to tell folks that one time that he did such and such a thing? That it can't be. As you can see, we're all fighting for our lives now. All of us are fighting for our lives. But see, the thing is, we've always been fighting for our lives. We've been trying to tell y'all that for the longest time. And you keep telling us that your candidate's policies are better for our lives. And we keep telling you, this is how we can help you make that case to our people. And you don't want to do it. And you wonder why people don't vote for your candidate. But because the other end of that is the Democratic Party, they know how to market. Their message is shit.
You mean the Republican?
No, the Democrats, the Democratic Party. This is why, the Democratic Party was able to harness the power of the CBC sitting in the South, just waiting to see what Sanders was going to do, what kind of outreach he was going to have. What void they were going to have to fill to get those people to vote the way the Democratic Party wanted them to vote. And I'm sorry, the Sanders campaign made it easy. Bernie Sanders cannot make this case for making the case for his policies amid this coronavirus issue easy for Biden to skate by and continue to win the nomination, and for Trump to actually win the presidency on. He can't keep doing that. Ooh, that's a terrible, terrible. Our dog is, ooh, that's horrible. That's a horrible smell coming from that dog. All right. Real quick, we got a couple other topics we want to talk about, and really, really quickly. There has been, as we are about to face, we don't know what kind of horrors we're about to face. The numbers projected for the people infected with coronavirus in the next few weeks, and the projected deaths are somewhere between, the experts project around 2 million people will be infected in this country, and they're projecting between 100 and 240,000 deaths. Now, we don't know if those numbers are true. Here's what we do think. That no matter what happens, Trump is setting himself up to win no matter what. No matter what happens. Because, see, if the number of people infected in the next couple of weeks don't reach 2 million, and there are not 100,000 or 240,000 deaths, then Trump can say, well, see, I was right for not responding the way the other countries did. I was right by not, locking down the country early. He wins if those projected numbers are not reached. But if those projected numbers are reached, he also wins by proposing a limited expansion of Medicare for all. Either way, and it doesn't matter what other crappy, ridiculous thing Donald Trump has done in order to actually create the crisis, to exacerbate the crisis that we are in right now. Doesn't matter what else he's done that has made it exponentially more horrible than it needs to be. Those two things, if the projected numbers aren't reached, he can say he was right by not locking down the country. And all the conservatives can say that they were right. By saying that they wanted to keep the economy open and all this kind of bullshit. And then if the projected numbers are reached, then he can win also with this, Medicare for all COVID edition. Politics. You might not want to play politics amid this crisis, but these people are. They have no problem doing it. So last thing, there's been a lot of talk in the last few weeks, hon, and this goes back to your point at the beginning of the show about how you are an essential worker. Your boss just got his letter from the city saying that his services are essential. You drive a truck.
Yep.
So
your life is expendable.
So, you said that, you're being sacrificed, and you were right, because there's a lot of talk from all these white people, these rich white people and their few weirdo black lackeys about sacrificing older people to save the economy.
What is this, Logan's Run?
Right, we're all going to carousel. We reach 35 and it's time to go. Look, that we all know that was some garbage from the get-go, right? Because these people are not going to sacrifice their parents. Their elderly parents aren't going back to work. They ain't sacrificing us, our elderly parents who have to work because they're poor, because they can't afford not to work, because they're low-wage workers. So they have to go to work, even if they are elderly and have pre-existing conditions that make them more vulnerable to not being able to recover from this disease. But, that is a situation that is not something that a lot of these rich white folks who are talking about they're willing to sacrifice old people to save the economy. Not only will it not affect them, and it won't affect anybody like them, it mostly affects black people. It mostly affects poor people, native people. And as a matter of fact, this virus, the numbers are slow in coming out, but because a lot of places, a lot of states, don't want to report the number of deaths by race
Mm.
because they're terrified of what those numbers will show. But we're going to throw a few links in the description of the video to show you that, yeah, COVID-19 doesn't discriminate, but the United States does. The United States healthcare system does. The United States society does. And because of that, because of the discrimination that the U.S. has ignored all this time, 400 years, now coronavirus is a greater existential threat to Black folk, to Native folk, to our Latinx brothers and sisters still picking our food down in those fields
And building their buildings, because
and
most of the construction workers at these construction sites are Latinx men.
Mm-hmm. Yep, still. So look.
Yeah. So, but I want to end on this.
Yes.
What's his name? Bolsonaro.
Yeah.
Now you read a story to me about Bolsonaro found religion, and all of a sudden, his thing is, now here's the guy who's wreaking havoc on the Amazon. Here's a guy who supports the extrajudicial murder of police of Black people by the police down there. Here's a guy who just a horrible guy, and then he's just a horrible guy, man. I mean, it's nothing that's evil that this guy hasn't embraced, and so anyway, but Corona kind of scared him a little bit, and so what happens is that now he discovered his Catholicism. So he rediscovered his Catholicism now. The trees weren't sacred before. The indigenous people of the Amazon weren't sacred. They weren't God's children. They were just people that was getting in the way of capitalism. And so, and all of this stuff, he was like the reverse thing of Christ throwing the thieves out of the temple. He was like the Antichrist throwing all of what is all of what is productive and harmony in nature. He was that guy. He was that guy. And so what happens is that he discovered that no matter what his philosophy is that he's subject to the same forces of nature like the rest of us.
Yep.
And his money, his prestige, his power, and all this other kind of stuff, his what is it, bellicosity, and all this other kind, none of that stuff is saving him. So, but what happens with folks like these? They fall back on religion. So what happens is he's like, oh my God, I am a Catholic. And so now he discussed, and this is the story you said to me, he is going to fast. Right? Now, look, I understand that religion is full of stories of people who've done horrible things and been redeemed. But if I was God and I sat down and watched the way this joker operated, and now all of a sudden you want to fast, and I'm supposed to accept that fast, and I'm supposed to overlook all of this stuff that you have done, all of the stuff that you're responsible for and everything else. And yet, because you won't put food in your belly or drink water, I don't know what kind of fast he's doing, but because you're denying yourself of those things, then somehow I'm supposed to look as God or overlook all this other kind of stuff. I am merciful and forgiving, but you're asking too much. Now, this is the thing here is that, and you and I was talking about this morning. It's like 60% of the known cures for diseases that we have gotten in the past, like polio and all this other kind of stuff, and other diseases that we continue to cure, most of those plant-based foundations were found in the Amazon.
Yep.
So think about what is lost by the deforestation of not only the Amazon, but all of the great forests in the world, but especially the Amazon. And we already know that the Amazon is scientists nicknamed the Amazon the lungs of the earth.
Right.
Right. So it's a very important ecosystem. And because of greed, and because of capitalist greed and all this other kind of stuff, now we don't know what we have been prevented from. Future cures, future treatments, or whatever, based upon the greed of a few capitalists. Now, Bolsonaro didn't, he discovered his Catholicism, but he didn't rediscover his own negative actions. Like he didn't chastise himself and say, you know what, I was wrong. Let me not kill the indigenous people.
Right.
Let me not support the extrajudicial killings of black Brazilians by police. Let me not turn back every environmental thing, and let me not turn Brazil into a toxic waste hole because of profit. No, he didn't address any of that. No, he is going to forego his Starbucks and forego his meal and whatever they eat down in Brazil. And this is the kind of type of stuff that we as citizens, whether we're in Brazil or whether we're in America, wherever, this is the type of stuff that we need to just say enough is enough.
Yeah.
When Trump got on TV and said that the CDC said you need to wear a mask or some kind of face covering every time you go out, and that's what they said, but I'm not wearing one. What kind of leader is that? You would figure that you're the leader, and the first thing you go and you say, this is a horrible guy, Trump. He, when Obama was in charge, and they had the what was it, the SARS or whatever was on.
Yeah.
Oh, Trump said that it was not just Trump. All of his buddies on the right wing were saying, "Oh, this is Obama's fault," as if Obama has a lab in the White House and he's going to create these viruses. But Trump, typical coward, typical hypocrite, narcissist, goes and when somebody asks him, "Is it your fault that we don't have enough masks? That we don't have enough, PPE stuff to give to?" It's not my fault. I didn't do it.
I don't take any responsibility.
I don't take any responsibility. And yet, this is the crux of white supremacy. Why do I say that? Because Obama was expected to be perfect. Now, I'm not y'all know, if you've been following the show, you know Jackie and I are not big fans of Obama. But fair is fair. And when Obama was there, he was expected to walk a line. He wasn't supposed to make any mistakes. And any little thing he couldn't be human. And Obama was the symbol of how Black America is treated. We don't have any room for error.
That's a good point.
But here you got a guy like Trump who unapologetically sits up there with no shame and say, "Yeah, I'm the president, but
it ain't my fault.
It ain't my fault." And yet nobody, not nobody in the media, you might have had a few, but there was no outcry to say, "Man, you should be ashamed of yourself to get up there and say that this is on your watch." I mean, there's no Harry Truman was famously saying, "The buck stops with me."
That's right.
So how are you going to sit up there and say, "Oh well, I don't take responsibility"? That shows you what kind of coward he is. That shows you, man, that he is a 70-something-year-old child. Because that's what a kid would say. "I didn't do it. It's not my fault. I didn't do it." Yep. Instead of being a man and say, "You know what? Yeah, we fucked up. You know what I mean? We screwed up. Yeah, we knew this was coming. And my administration, we didn't act in the proper manner, but we're going to act now. And we're going to put all the resources of the federal government to make sure that this nation gets through this. Kings are not born. Kings are made. And it's these times like this that shows you what you're really made of. And Trump, you're just a orange bag of shit.
What more need there be said? Y'all, thanks so much for joining us tonight on this edition of Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous, the most threatening, the most controversial show on social media.
We really appreciate you all hanging in with us and watching. Those of you on YouTube, subscribe and share the video. Invite your friends. Those of you on Facebook, like and share. For our friends over in the watch party, hey Keith, hey Larry, hey, I just want to make sure, hey Andrea, just want to make sure I tell you, hey Sabia, that Sean, the voice Blackman, said, "I like what you're doing with your beard, Mr. Abdus."
Man, you know what? Man.
I knew that was going to make his night. That's why I had to tell him.
Man, this means so much to me. Thank you, Sean. Oh my God.
We love y'all so much. We thank you so much. Wash your hands. Stay the fuck at home. Take care of each other. As always, peace. If you're willing to fight for it. And we're in a fight for our lives now, folks. Ain't we? I had to make sure I read the comment from Sean.